Okay, I will call this meeting to order at 1:03 p.m. and thank you for joining. I'd like to tell gratitude that we are gathered on the unceded ancestral territory of Hopish. People have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding Little Bowen Island. So we are here at the Thursday, November 20th Committee of the Whole meeting. First item up is approval of the agenda. I'll look to our corporate officer for the introduction of the late items.
There are no late items.
No late items, and with that, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda for November 20th. Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any changes, amendments to the agenda? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that carries unanimously. Section 3, public comments. I'll look to our corporate officer for any public comments here today.
And there are no public comments.
No public comments. So diving right into staff reports. 4.1, the 2026-2030 operating budget plan. Over to our CFO, Kristen Watson.
Thank you through the mayor to the rest of the committee as a whole. We have a presentation today of all of our different departmental operating budgets. Again, we're not seeking council direction. We're not seeking any approval. We are simply taking this opportunity to advise council of what some of the operating pressures are on the budget for this year, and just giving you the opportunity to ask some questions and get a full understanding of how we've developed our operating budget for the year. So if I may, I'll take a moment to share my screen. We have our presentation for you. Okay. So we based our inflation assumptions on using a 4% as a salary and benefits inflation factor. And this is based on current regional collective agreement settlement trends. They seem to be settling in the range of 3.5 to 4.5. So we went in the middle with 4%. 3.5% has been used for future years as an assumption in the inflationary factor for wages and benefits for each of 27 through 2030. And a 3% inflation factor has been assumed for all years for all supplies and services that are subject to those types of increases. I wanted to talk a little bit about the general revenue assumptions in our plan. There are some changes year to year on revenues that are earned in the general fund. So, for example, looking at our first category of revenue, sale of services. So those are things that are the provision of services to all island-wide residents. They're things like wharf fees, recreation classes, that sort of thing. Some of the negative factors on our revenue category this year of sale of service include the expectation that the license of occupation revenue at the old fire hall will come to an end. So that would be a reduction of about $50,000 each year on that revenue. As well, we believe that our expectation of $60,000 of rental revenue at this facility is too high, and we are trying to be conservative, a more realistic expectation. We've put in and we've used $20,000 for rental revenue at this facility for next year. Some of the other things in there include recycling revenue, public works permits, wharf fees. Wharf fees is a really good news story. It has increased by about 60% over last year, ever since we have increased our wharf fees and made it easier for people to pay. So we've set those at $66,000 in this budget. And lastly, business license revenue, we've set the expectation for that at $85,000 for 2026, and it's estimated to grow to about $92,000 by 2030. Grant revenues, of course, are directly related to the expenditure on the other side. So we are seeing a significant decrease in our grant revenue, but that's because we're winding up on our capital projects. So 1.1 million. The things that are in there are our base small communities grant revenue of $450,000. We are anticipating continuation of the Emergency Operations Center and the Emergency Social Services Center grant of $30,000 each. We anticipate using or accessing up to 310,000 of our Housing Accelerator funds to pay for some of the strategic initiatives, which we'll talk about a little bit later today. We've got an ongoing 2-year approved Fire Smart program with a Fire Smart coordinator. And we are budgeting 132,000 use of that money in 2025 and 80,000 for 132,000 for 2026 and 80,000 for 2027. There's other small miscellaneous grants in there. We do continue to apply for the Human Resources Social Development Canada grant to help with youth employment options in the summertime, as well as we will be expending the balance of our provincial grant funding. We'll be expending $50,000 this year in order to wind up the OCP process. The revenue category for development revenue, those are all of our building permits, development permits, that sorts of thing. Those are anticipated to be reduced. We are expecting perhaps an almost $85,000 reduction in them this year. We believe that this year's estimate, again, was too ambitious. So we have reduced our estimate of development revenue down to $307,640, down from 2025 estimate, which was $392,400. And just closing out the end of this year, we're just about to approach 300,000 in revenue. So we believe that that 307 figure is a realistic expectation for next year. Other income, that includes our investment income. It includes late payment penalties on property taxes and interest on overdue taxes. We are estimating that figure in total to be about 475,000 this year. And that is down from approximately 603,231. What's driving that is a reduction in our estimated interest earnings on our general funds, because we have seen a trend where interest rates are continuing to be decreased. Okay, so I will ask Sophie, the corporate officer, to join me at the table here. She's going to talk a little bit about the administration department in the operations budget and some of the costs that we are anticipating for next year.
Thank you. So the administration department handles both the administration budget as well as what we call legislative services, which is essentially the mayor and council budget, as well as the general government budget, which covers all expenses throughout all departments. So in the administration department itself, our quick department profile, the CAO is the main employee of council and reports to council directly and also provides operational oversight of the organization. And then the administration department also includes HR, as well as myself and the deputy corporate officer, the communications coordinator, and our administrative assistant / IT coordinator. We'll go into more of those on the next slide. This gives an example of the duties that are carried out by each of us. There are 6 full-time equivalent employees in the department, and we're all looking very sharp there in that department photo. In terms of new initiatives, well, expenses really in 2026 that fall within these 3 budgets of administration, legislative services, and general government. Next year, we are undertaking a compensation policy review, or sorry, a compensation review that's part of the staff compensation policy. That's $15,000. In 2026 and 2030, we're budgeting 41,000 for the municipal election, and that is to cover election official wages and supplies and expenses. That is an increase over last time just due to inflation. In 2026, we are contemplating a slight increase of $10,000 for organization-wide procurement training, as well as in the communications budget for video production, we're asking for an additional $10,000. in addition, some initiatives that we'll be carrying out in the department next year are the implementation of the accessibility plan, the leadership development program. We're going to be seeing an increased attendance at training and professional development opportunities in senior management. We're considering at this time looking at a potential IT officer role in 2027, just to reduce our outsourced IT costs. As well as starting in December 2026, there would be, or no, sorry, the 2026 would contemplate a 4% increase. That's the COLA increase to mayor and council remuneration. But in the new term, starting December 2026, council is currently looking at that council remuneration policy that would see an increase in both the mayor and councillor remuneration happening in 2026 for the next term. As well, we're looking at $10,000 in 2026 and 2027, so 20,000 total for new council orientation. And a small increase in the new memberships for Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities. We do have some small savings in the administration department. We're not paying rent anymore, so that's $102,000. That's coming out of that operating budget. Just the fact of the municipal offices being in the community center now, where our maintenance utilities are reduced by about $4,000. We are saving a bit on our property insurance at about $10,000 being in the community center. We've reduced the council conferences budget just based on actual spending trends that we've seen over the last few years. It was at $40,000, we've reduced it to $30,000. And we are looking at postponing implementation of an electronic records management system until 2027. So that should see some savings in 2026 of about $20,000.
Thank you. So just to sum up the mayor and council expenditures, overall, we estimate an increase year over year from the 2025 year to the 2026 year of approximately 3%. Most of that is coming from the change in cost of living allowance and adjusting for the transition to the new council in December of 2026. We have some reductions there on the supplies and services, which just know that we've over provisioned for telephone and communications expense. And then we have estimated a decrease in professional development and conference expense based on those spending patterns, but we also added 10,000 in. So there's really a very nominal net change year over year for that new council orientation. Looking at the CAO and administration budget, we are looking at a change of about 17%. The most significant one is because we've added a new FTE to the salaries and benefits line. So back from our committee of the whole meeting in October, we did put forth a new FTE request for a strategic initiatives officer that is driving approximately $120,000 of the change. And the remainder of that comes from cost of living allowance adjustments and grid progression, that kind of thing. Increased professional development and conferences has been included and provisioned in this budget, as well as a decrease of $20,000 to remove that provision in 2026 for the records management work. And lastly, then in our general government, to sum up that budget, those accounts in that budget, we've added $21,000 to salaries and benefits. So that is going to provide compensation to the election workers come October. There's a change in the travel and Pro-D. So that's in respect of that corporate-wide procurement training that we spoke about. Rent at Municipal Hall. So the full year's rent is $110,000. So we've completely avoided those costs going forward. In the 2025 budget, we only had a partial year budgeted for. So we only put about $27,000 in there. So we've removed that for the 2026 budget. We've added $25,000 in election supplies. Again, that's just sort of a one-time this thing. It'll come up again in the next election cycle. We do have some savings. We've renegotiated our insurance policy recently, so we anticipate $10,000 of savings in this category, and you'll see it as a common theme in some of the other departments' insurance budgets as well. We've added a one-time every 4-year compensation, staff compensation review allowance of $15,000 and a slight reduction in the community center maintenance and repair budget that those expenses have now been shifted over into the community center budget. So overall, year over year change in this line items are approximately 7.7%. We could pause there and ask if council had any questions or we wanted to just continue to the next department.
Councilor Pass, followed by Councilor Geoghegan.
I was wondering what the 10,000 for video production would be?
Yeah, that's an increase in through the chair, sorry. That would be an increase in the existing communications budget to allow for communication by video production. So we don't have the skills or equipment in-house to do video production for communication. So like more visual communications from the municipality, you know, storytelling about issues like infrastructure matters that we could maybe display, you know, video images, that sort of thing to portray projects that are going on. Things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Geoghegan.
Okay, so I'm finding your presentation quite a bit different from the material that was provided in terms of just leaping around.
It's just for this one because this is the only department that Sophie speaks to.
Okay. So you've answered my one question in terms of the grant revenue being down, and that's the winding up of the capital projects. I'm not sure how we, there's items in the closed meetings with respect to other things that don't appear to be in the budget at all. And once any of that becomes public, if it does, then does that shift things in the budget?
This is a very early first draft. So as we receive new information, all future drafts will be adjusted to account for any new information which we receive.
Are there any moving expenses that have been included in this year's budget that won't show up in any other?
In the facility management budget, let's see that
Is that part of
Lee's presentation.
operations?
It's part of facility management when Lee speaks. He'll address that.
So it is part of this discussion?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
With respect to the drop in the development income, all of the different permits and everything, is this sort of post-pandemic? There was an increase before and during the pandemic, and now it's settled down again, and this is possibly more what we're going back to in terms of being more normal?
Well, it's definitely tied to the general economic slowdown, and the slowdown in the housing market. Our development revenue is a significant amount of it is driven by renovations and that kind of thing too. So with less building activity, our revenue takes a hit as well.
All right, so then, when you get into the administrative budget, you've got the strategic initiative officer, 120,000. Does that show up in the governance?
It shows up in the general admin CAO budget. There's an additional increase in the wages, salaries and benefits line item.
And is that the dedicated IT officers that you're projecting for 26 or 27? Is that included anywhere?
We haven't costed that out yet. That's just really like a
dream.
yes.
Okay. And is that the kind of work that Janet is doing?
No.
Is that the off-site?
Yeah, the work
people
that
fill out
that our IT coordinator is currently doing is like a liaison between our contractor and staff, just being able to be like a physical presence here in the office to assist with that.
And where do the election expenses show up in this? Which department?
That is under general government.
Yeah, general.
It's on,
So in the handout, the general government is page 7. And there's,
yeah, 7.
okay, so.
So you see salaries and benefits in 2026 is a single line item of 21,000, and then it doesn't repeat again until 2030.
You've got a different printout than I do.
It's page 10 of 114 of the agenda.
Sorry. Something completely different. Okay. Find it. Um, I'm having trouble keeping track of all of this, and anyway, thank you. Leave it.
Thank you, Councilor Gay.
Just on the, general government salaries and benefits, the extra, that 21,000 for the election. I'm assuming there should be something else in services and supplies. For
There is, yeah, that's right.
all that stuff. But the other is, why is the 21 the same in 23? Salaries and benefits, it'll be I'm assuming that's the higher the counters and stuff, and
Yeah.
one would assume you're gonna pay a higher rate.
We've inflated the services and supplies line item, which includes the other 25. We're never quite sure which part goes to salaries and which part goes to supplies and services. We did budget 41,000 in each of both of those years. In fact, this is the first year that we've ever increased the elections budget. It's been constant for a significant amount of years for at
So you-
30,000. So
You just mentioned 41,000, but the salaries and benefits line is 20.
yeah, so the other part of it, as you just mentioned, is in the services and
Okay, so
supplies. There's 25 in there. It comes out, it goes back in year 5.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Moss. Not seeing any further questions.
Well.
Go ahead.
So, do we need to do videos? Is that one of the expense items that we could say is questionable or not necessary? A nice to have, but not necessary?
It would be nice to have to enhance our communication and just add another tactic to communicate with the public.
Is that commonly done with all the other municipalities?
It is quite common, yeah.
I could speak to that if I will. It's, I believe we discussed during our last session on strategic planning that we wanted to be able to highlight to the community and advertise out all the work that our staff are doing. Other municipalities do it. Actually, in developing this budget, provided several examples of similar videos that other municipalities do. Could be a 1-minute video on, hi, I'm Andre, the water treatment operator, and this is what I do during the day, and this is where I work. So the idea was to create a sense of connection between the workers out there and the residents in order to, as we go into looking at a upgrade to the operations yard, to make them have the public understand what it is that the people are dealing with and their current working arrangements. That's one purpose. The other thing is, I think it's important, given this facility and its revenue generating potential and the many different configurations we're seeing now, whether it's House Down Forum or last night's event with the Community Economic Development Committee, some gala evening, that there's potential in advertising this building. And one way to do that is to create a short video, have it available on our website so that external people who are interested in renting it can see what is actually available here and all the different configurations it can be used for to drive up revenue and usage of the building. And I think there was one more thing that I can't think of at the moment, but this has widespread application for a lot of the stuff we want to do, just trying to get the message out there in the public realm.
Not seeing any further questions?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor.
I'll take this opportunity to talk about the finance department. So in finance, we are providing strategic financial leadership to mayor and council. Our core activities, of course, include setting annual tax rates. We set the utility rates. We look after revenue collection. We compile the 5-year financial plan, we do the day-to-day accounting and manage the annual audited financial statements. We do quarterly and interim budget monitoring reports to council. And we provide frontline customer service to anybody who comes into the municipality to conduct business. We also make sure that all of our financial statements are filed appropriately with the province and published on our website in accordance with public bonus decisions. Our staffing, our department is 4 full-time employees. There's myself, Chief Financial Officer. There's Delphine Kong-Weavers, our Senior Financial Accountant. We have Mirwin Hines, who looks after all of our accounts payable and payroll questions. And we have Ely Allen, who is our Property Tax and Utilities Administrator. This year, too, she has taken on an additional role as support to the Business License Inspector. We have a couple of new initiatives on the burner for this year. We are the work to develop some e-commerce payment options is effectively complete. So we'll be looking at implementing those e-payment options later this year and into early next year. What we've done in anticipation of that service to people is we have included an additional $5,000 for credit card processing fees. Some municipalities do add convenience charges, some do not. At this point, we have taken an approach where we will assume that we are going to gain additional payment. We're going to have more timely and more effective collection of some of our e-payment things, such as our wharf fees and our bylaw fines. We seem to be getting increased compliance and more timely payment of those things. So for the time being, we are including the credit card processing. We want to gauge what the cost of it is. And after we have a better handle on that, we're going to come back to council later next year to see if there is an appetite to add that convenience fee. A couple of future initiatives beyond 2026, and I haven't put any provision in the budget for this, but I just want to speak of it. I want to be sure that council is aware that we are working with a very old legacy financial reporting and property tax system. It is the same one that we have been using since incorporation, and it is not a very user-friendly system. It's got very poor reporting capabilities, and it doesn't provide timely access to data for non-financial people. So what we find is anybody who's seeking financial information is always having to go through either myself or Delphine or someone else to get that information, and it's just not particularly effective. So in the future, when we've done a bit of research, you may see a request or recommendation to do some upgrades on our ERP, our enterprise resource planning system. Some of the savings in our budget this year is that last year's audit fees, we've reduced them by $8,000 because we had a significant implementation of a new revenue accounting standard last year, which required some additional work on the part of the auditor. So we had that included in the budget last year. We've removed it as a one-time thing for 2026. Looking at our year-over-year change, most of our change is coming from the increase to cost of living allowance and grid progression for staff through this pay grades. And we've also included that reduction of audit fees that I spoke about. So overall, we're looking at an increase to our budget of approximately 3.6%, or about $22,000 from last year. So I can pause there and take questions from council if there are any.
Thank you. I'm just wondering whether the legacy financial software, is that the same software that we've had since incorporation?
Yes, it is.
Because it seems to me there might be some big advantages to updating the software. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
just know from being on the library board that, anyway, I think I'll save the commentary for later.
Let's see, any further questions? Yeah.
Community grants, I'll just take a moment to share with you what we've contemplated in the community grants budget this year. So it is similar to last year. I think it's increased by $2,000 over last year. The community grants budget contemplates 61,000 approximately to the Hearth, which is in accordance with their core services agreement that is currently in place. We are anticipating granting 33,950 to the Community Museum and Archive Society, 25,750 to Tourism Bowen Island, 10,300 to Family Place, and $35,000 has been provisioned in there. And that is in respect of the Hearth with the proposed renewal of the production coordinator grant. So that, of course, will be subject to council final approval. And just to let you know that we've earmarked a spot for the grants budget for that in there. That leaves an allocated budget of $31,500, which will be by application by community organizations. And continue or questions?
Can you remind me again, what's the projected rental revenue for 2026 for the community center?
We've just put in $20,000 for this year. We had quite an ambitious target of 60 in there. Based on our activity, we realized that that's probably too ambitious. It's going to take a little longer to grow that figure. So we've put it down to 20,000.
Okay. Does that include theater productions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the fire and rescue department budget, and I would ask the fire chief to join me, please.
Thank you.
Do you want to drive?
No. I guess.
Yeah, I know it's really tiny.
Okay, so as you're all aware, in our department, we do 24/7 fire suppression, structural interface and vehicle fires, rapid medical response, and also technical rescues, vehicle extrication, rope rescue, that sort of thing. Our firefighter training, basically we follow the BC structure minimum training standards, and we try to meet or exceed those. We have certification tracking, skills maintenance, scenario-based drills, equipment, PPE, and apparatus maintenance to ensure safe, reliable operations. Fire prevention and community safety. We have inspections of public, commercial, and multi-residential buildings for bylaw and provincial compliance. Fire smart education, property assessments, wildfire risk reduction projects, also as well as school programs, open houses, public safety campaigns. We also work in close coordination with the RCMP, BC Ambulance, ESS, and municipal partners, and we support the community preparedness and emergency planning initiatives. In our department, we have full-time fire chief, 0.8 FTE deputy chief, assistant training officer also at a 0.8, emergency program coordinator at a 1. We also have a 0.4 FTE grant-funded Fire Smart coordinator and 32 volunteer firefighters. We're looking for an additional staffing request in 2026 for a 0.4 FTE assistant training officer. That would be to support compliance with professional training standards and reduce leadership burnout. We're also looking to add computer-aided dispatch tablets at a cost of $3,600 per year. Those would enhance our situational awareness, mapping hydrant locations, real-time dispatch information, which we don't have at all right now. So it's all just relying on radio communication. We also need to increase our AED program replacement parts costs. We do have a municipal responsibility for that program, and so we need to keep up with that. And then a small increase to fire hall maintenance just to match what actual costs are. We have some savings. $15,000 per year in our insurance. And that's just due to the new insurance provider that we have. We've reduced slightly our telephone communications budget just by streamlining some of our service plans and also looking at reducing by about $9,000, our vehicle servicing just by moving in-house some of our servicing.
So overall to the fire and rescue budget, we're looking at an increase of about 6.8%. Much of that being driven from the new FTE staffing request. The $3,600 of tablets is a new expense to us this year. And as well, we do have an agreement with Surrey 911 Dispatch. We have an annual contract agreement with them. We're doing a bit of a catch up. I don't think that we increased the budget for that last year. So we're doing a 2-year increase, which is why that's going up by $6,000 this year. We've also included in those supplies and services that request for $7,000 increase to the AED replacement part line item. And 15,000 or so savings from this insurance review that we've done. We also realized we've made a budget error and budgeted for one insurance policy in 2 places. So I think there's about a $10,000 decrease to the insurance premium, and then a $5,000, which we've decreased it further by picking up on that budget error where we had it budgeted in 2 places. 9,000 on savings from locally maintaining some of the vehicles, and 4,000 increase overall for approximately 52,000 year-over-year change in that budget line item. So we can pause and, I have one more. I wanted to show you the emergency planning line item too. So that is very year-over-year. The only real change in this budget is coming from the full year impact of moving that 0.6 FTE emergency planning coordinator position in 2024 was 0.6. It was moved to a 1.0 in 2025, but that was done partway through the year. So now this year in 2026, you see the full cost impact of making that adjustment. And then the other line item in emergency planning, of course, are all of the grant funded expenditures. A big piece of the 2025 budget was coming from the First Nations paddle project, the emergency outreach grant with First Nations. We have got a little bit of that left, but we're reducing the overall the grant funded expenditures in the emergency planning budget by about $34,000. So we'll just be looking at the FireSmart, the emergency social services, the emergency planning coordinator grant, and then we have about $50,000 set aside for a program called Emergency 911, ENG 911.
Yeah. That's just to do with upgrading.
Next gen.
Yeah, thank you. And that's an initiative that's being funded in order to improve our mapping ability island-wide. So we are getting increased mapping ability on those tablets that the fire chief spoke of that go in each of the fire trucks. So that is the piece that's grant funded that improves access, real-time access to data, so that there's an ability to locate addresses on the one when they're responding in an emergency. So I think that's it, and we can pause now for questions. Okay.
Thank you.
I will speak to the bylaw services department profile. We've got Doug, who is off sick today, unfortunately. So in bylaw, the focus is on achieving compliance with bylaws and policies through communication, education, and enforcement. Many of the key programs include responding to service requests from the community, enforcement of our streets and traffic and bylaw parking by daily patrols. The bylaw officer functions as the animal control officer. The bylaw officers operate and collect fees and maintain order at our Snug Cove, Mount Gardner docks. They issue all of the permits for filming and any other permits for use of public places, or they process the noise bylaw exemptions applications. And they have become the de facto coordinator and supervisor of BIM's ferry marshaling program. So the bylaw services department is 3 employees. There's one FTE supervisor, Doug. There is 2 part-time bylaw officers. We've got Jesse and Wendy. Jesse's focus is on patrolling and outside enforcement work, and Wendy's focus is on inside doing the administrative tasks, completing applications for permits and documentation, that sort of thing. This year for the new initiative, we are going to be supporting the council strategic priority of dealing with ferry marshalling impact on Bowen Island. So we are proposing to put forth a ferry marshalling plan with a total cost of about $50,000 this year. So coverage is going to include 2 traffic control personnel working 7-hour shifts on Saturdays and Sundays from May 1st through till Labor Day. We're going to add a 3rd traffic control person on very specific days when in the past we know we have had significant problems. So think ball tournament day, think Bow Fest and a dog dance, those sorts of times. So as well, we're going to add that coverage back in for the Thanksgiving Monday on that weekend as well. We're considering assigning traffic enforcement authority to these ferry marshals, so they'll be given the ability to write parking tickets to address people in the moment in the lineup that are not following directions. The costs, of course, are going to be increased. We're going to make sure that they're appropriately uniformed out. There's going to need to be additional training by giving them this additional power to ticket. There's some training requirements that go along with that. As well, we anticipate needing to produce public communication materials that we will be able to hand out to provide awareness and notice to people to show them how the ferry line works. Other new initiatives included in this 2026 budget, we are looking to acquire another module, which is automates the bylaw violation notice. So it would automate the whole generation of letters to people when their tickets have gone unpaid. There's an initial cost to do that, and it'll be a $2,000 annual maintenance fee going forward. Implementation on the website of these e-commerce payments. So we are expecting that our permit fees and our violation notices will be streamlined in order to collect payment for those, that people will be able to just go on our website, click a button and make a payment for that. And lastly, as sort of falling out of the ferry marshalling initiative is the Snug Cove parking strategy. So you're going to see a report come forward from bylaw suggesting a pay parking framework for Snug Cove. They will suggest some options for consideration about that. And also we are going to be researching an ability to incorporate parking or stoppage fees for non-resident ferry line users. Again, this is in support of the ferry marshalling strategy initiated and communicated by council. Some things we've taken out of the budget this year. Looking at our prior year expenses in legal, we've reduced that budget by $5,000 this year. And also we realized we over budgeted, made an error in employee payroll taxes and benefits. So we took a one-time reduction in that budget line item to adjust for actual expenses. So overall, we did have a significant ferry marshalling staffing component included in last year's budget. We didn't nearly spend much of it. So that's why you'll see there's actually a tiny decrease, because we've rationalized that budget with that change to the payroll tax coming out. We've actually projected that with that service, with that level of service, we're going to be spending the same amount of money this year as we budgeted for last year. You can see we're very much under budget year to date in 2025. So we believe we have enough there to cover off what we've planned to do with this ferry marshalling strategy. We've increased our travel and our professional development budget in order to allow for more training for these bylaw officers. Again, supplies and equipment are increased in order to cover off for needed uniforms and communication supplies. our legal insurance, we coming down, and then we put additional expenditure in there to reflect the fact that with additional ferry marshaling, there would likely be more vehicle and associated costs with that. So overall, the budget is very much similar to last year, about $7,000 more, which is a total change of about 2% over last year. And I can pause here for questions.
Let's wait for the customers.
Great report. I'm curious about the detail on the tickets that'll be issued by the bylaw officers in the poll for the parking in the ferry lineup and elsewhere. Is that going to be a physical ticket that they give them, or is it are they just going to take the license plate number and it'll come to them in the mail?
No, they would be physical tickets,
Okay,
a blue ticket.
so they'll have a little gizmo that will just spit that out for them.
Right now they're handwritten, but that is something that we've talked about, getting, because it's just much easier, much
Yeah.
quicker. And then the record keeping factor of that, it's automated, and the data that's put into that system then gets uploaded.
Right.
So from a data collection
Yeah.
perspective, it's much more efficient, and we've talked about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Customers.
Given that this package is the package that's the community is going to be reading, it's not really clear in there that the ferry marshaling program that it's costing us $50,000 more or per year to do this.
Okay,
So if maybe before this gets up for public, something needs to be put into there to that. The other is, have we put anything in the revenue line? For hoping to get something from BC Ferry?
I've tended to take a conservative approach
not put
and
anything
not put it
Yeah.
in, no.
Okay. So that's just the other side that should be clear. And it's not totally clear exactly what stoppage fees for non-residents using municipal roadways for ferry loading.
It is a very high
I know what you
conceptual
mean by
idea.
it, but I don't think the general public reading it is going to have a clue what you're talking about.
We want to come forward to council with a more defined, refined proposal before we really know what that looks like ourselves.
That's a good.
So looking at page 27 of the document that is attached to the agenda, and the last line is vehicle maintenance and repair. Budgeted this year for 3,800 and actual year to date of 196.
Yeah.
And then projected budgets increased to.
Yeah.
10 and 11,000 afterwards.
Yes.
Exactly.
We capture all of our vehicle gas purchases, maintenance stuff in Public Works, and then it's a year-end entry where I flow some of those costs out to all of the different departments that use vehicles. So we do it based on an allocation formula rather than like a direct. We would miss some of it in each department if we just relied on.
And does any of that include some of the discussions in terms of scooters or golf carts or something other than the full?
Not at this point, but we still have a couple of months to go before we're at that point of adopting a budget, so it's not off the table.
I'm curious about, based on what we saw last year, and I know that I'm speaking to the ferry marshaling in particular, where we had two people or two marshals sort of working the line, and then we brought in additional staff later in the summer. Just whether two people at 7 hours a day on weekends is going to be enough, particularly in the summer months where folks are on vacation, where we are seeing likely increased visitation due to less travel to the US, for example, more travel within Canada, whether there's consideration of bolstering those hours in the summer or on those really peak times, so that if there is only one marshal out there trying to work an entire line from the wharf all the way back up to the ferry line in the school, whether that gives that person or the team of people that's going to be working enough support. So whether the question is like, is there enough hours there, or is there a desire to add more hours, or BC Ferries extend some additional funding? Could we expand those hours? Are there any considerations around that?
We can certainly talk about it, especially given the fact that, one of the ferry marshalers, he is actually joining us in a part-time capacity starting tomorrow, in bylaw. So, his name's Ian, and he was quite, he was there every weekend. So I think it would be best for us to, have a conversation with him and get his take on it. I know a lot of the shifts he was working this summer, he was working solo. And I would absolutely agree and support that one worker is insufficient. Our plan does include a minimum of 2 workers at any given time.
Okay.
But are there other days that we haven't contemplated that potentially he saw as were problematic, or certain times of the day perhaps? So we'll definitely seek his input to compile a more robust, or just more responsive to, based on his experience last summer.
Okay. Trying to think if I have another question there. This might be more operational, but given that we're talking about having those ferry marshals be able to write tickets for bylaw infractions, I know that, or I would assume that some of those infractions might not necessarily be codified yet in our in bylaw, like stopping in lanes of travel, or I'm not exactly sure what exists for the crosshatches. Is the anticipation that there's going to be a review of that before the occupancy season this summer, so that those staff are as well set up as they can be?
I think that would be something that we would need to do prior to getting them in a position where they're writing tickets. So
Okay. Great.
looking at our own bylaw and making sure that it's really clear what the enforcement capability, what the enforcement powers are.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Council, wait, I'm going to turn the chair over to you just for a moment. I have a contact lens
Oh, no.
emergency that's going on, but I don't want to stop the meeting. So if you're comfortable just chairing
right.
from your seat there for a couple minutes while I excuse myself, I'll be right.
Okay, so we're on to the next section.
Yeah, we're on to Public Works. So I would like to invite Sarah to join me at the front here, please.
To the chair, good afternoon. I'm pleased to present an overview of the Public Works Department today to you for first time. So talk about who we are, what we do, and the strategic initiatives we are advancing in 2026 to improve service delivery, reduce long-term costs, and improve community resilience. So Public Works, as you know better than me, is one of the departments that residents interact with them every day, whether they want it or not. So our first core responsibility is ensuring that Bowen Island roads and transportation network is safe and remains safe and functional. So this includes road repairs, rehabilitation and repaving, brushing and maintaining the sidelines, all the works related to the winter operations like snow removal, salt, and sand. And we also handle the hazard tree removal from the public properties, slope stabilization, removal of the obstructions, cleanup of the roadways. You like whatever you name it, we do for our roads and networks. That's why our budget is one of the biggest budget in the in this year. So another major area of responsibility is drainage for us. We need to clean up and stormwater infrastructure, clearing the beaches, culverts, performing replacement of the sewer storms and culverts is another responsibility that we need to carry on. Maintaining the public structure, main structures like docks, buildings, stairs and bridges, and our piers. It's the responsibility of the public works team. In 2026 capital plan, we are planning on constructing new assets to improve the level of the services for the community. That will be presented separately, but this is one of the core businesses that we have within a public works department. We support high quality parks and green spaces. We maintain all the trails, cleaning public toilets and beaches, landscapes, landscape maintenance, and playing fields maintenance. The other core business that we have is just maintaining the vehicles and equipment that we have. And basically, public works plays a key role in permitting activities that impact municipal infrastructure. So basically manage, and also we manage contracts of the solid waste services, maintenance, repair and replacement of municipal owned infrastructure used for solid waste services. And another activity that we perform is securing the grants, which is really, really essential for the projects that we do. So the public works staffing right now, our leadership structure includes a director of engineering who allocates about 40% of their time to utilities. A manager of infrastructure, which was added in 2025, and the public works superintendent. Together, this team provides strategic oversight, infrastructure planning, and capital project delivery for the municipality. The superintendent provides operational supervision, permitting oversight, and day-to-day coordination. We have one full-time public works coordinator supported part-time by the planning clerk. This role is really essential for us to manage permit processing, coordinating complaints and service requests, prepare contracts, grant applications, working on RFPs, and ensuring documents and communication flow properly throughout the organization and department. In roads and parks crew, we have the roads and parks operation foreman, who 50% of their time is allocated to the parks department, and Carla is ready to present what they do there. 4 full-time crew members are working for the public works. We have on-call staffs and under supervision of the foreman. The crew is responsible for hands-on operation and maintenance of the municipality-owned infrastructure and the fleet and equipment. 1 additional roads and parks crew person proposed for 2026 budget, and it's included in parks budget. So our parks manager will talk about it later. So the new initiatives that we have in 2026, I'd like to highlight our key strategic initiatives for 2026. The first is the launch of comprehensive asset management program. This is a multi-year initiative with substantial long-term operation benefits. This program will help us to understand the condition, life cycle, and also replacement needs of all municipality buildings, and will ensure better functional planning. This is a very fundamental initiative for us. It will shift our department from being reactive to being proactive. And we are going to be a data-driven asset management system. So in terms of the maintenance management system, there is another initiative that we are working on, is having maintenance software, PSD citywide, to support better asset management. We are introducing this software, which will track service requests, work orders, preventive maintenance tasks, and inspections. It will allow us to activate directly to individual assets, improve coordination and communication across the department. This software cost us $50,000, and with the maintenance fee of each year of $15,000. And so this investment will significantly improve operational efficiency and will allow us to measure progress and identify trends over the time. So basically, we will have a very good measure in place to kind of know how many requests we received from public. Everything will be documented, and how many requests was addressed during a year, or we can provide you with the quarterly report. The other request that we are proposing the purchase of a small excavator for $60,000 and $10,000 for the staff training. Also, we would like to have some sort of CAD software addition to our department. So this will allow us to do a lot of in-house drawings, instead of going to the consultants for every single drawings that we have. We can use this software to do minor works. $1,300 is the cost of the software, and we are going to have a little bit of training there too for our staff. An additional $24,000 for line painting is proposed here, restoring the budget to previous level and accommodating safety improvement such as fog lines, and the development of a standard operating procedures to ensure consistency, training support, and reliability in our operations. So these initiatives are not only improving our services, they are saving money for us. Here are some of the reductions already realized or anticipated. So with the addition of the new road and parks crew percent, we eliminate the need for on-call snow plowing, reducing the operation budget by $11,250 in 2026 by changing the insurance providers for the Snocco Wharf and the library. We achieved $23,000 in annual savings. We recently purchased a trailer for the service yard, which eliminates $19,000 of the annual rental cost. The excavator will enable us to reduce the contract services, $10,000 in 2027, and $5,000 2028. These are very conservative numbers. We'll provide you with better numbers as information arrives. These services demonstrate that a strategic investment in staff and equipment reduces the long-term operating costs while strengthening service delivery. So with that, I'm handing it to Kristen for.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so overall, starting with our salaries and benefits line item, we don't have any new additions this year, but we do see an increase in the salaries and benefits line item as the full year impact of the FTE that was added partway through the year last year is showing up now full in this year's budget. Travel and Pro D has been increased overall by about 7,290, and that's as a result driven by that need for training on the excavator. We have purchased, I think Sarah mentioned, we purchased that trailer down at the works yard, which is housing the staff room and the facility down there for staff. So that we don't have those monthly rental fees there associated with that anymore. We reviewed the road-based material budget. Paul has, looking back to 3-4 years of experience. We believe that we've been over provisioning that budget for several years now. So we did a one-time rationalization to reduce that by 20,000. And we added in the 15,000 anticipated annual license fees for this new maintenance manager software, which we had a demonstration of yesterday. Our dock and library insurance, our dock insurance has been extraordinarily high in the last few years. Just insurers do not want to provide this type of insurance for us. And we did seek a new insurance provider this year, and we realized some very significant savings on that. And in 2024, we did anticipate doing that thermoplastic inlay on the cove markings there. So we had it reduced our line painting budget by about $24,000. We haven't done the thermoplastic yet. We undertook a study to inform what the correct markings in the cove should be. So some decisions will be made on what markings should happen based on the information gleaned from that study for next year. But in the interim, we have restored the line painting budget. There is going to be additional work done to paint fog lines on the right-hand side of the road, which will provide more of a separation for pedestrian and cars and make it easier to see the edges of the road at nighttime. So overall, that budget then is expected to increase by about 9.1% over last year, and that's an increase in expenditures of about $130,000 overall.
Once again, I did see your hand up at one point.
All right, so I'm working from page 35 of the document that was attached to the agenda, which is the estimated upcoming budget. And the first line, salaries and benefits, I think you've explained that was the new part-time.
The full year impact of the manager of infrastructure coming online.
Right.
Yeah.
And just the part-time FTE that is being proposed, is that included in the 2026?
It's not included in Public Works. We speak to it in Public Works, but it does show up in Parks and Environment budget.
Okay, you also said that the Public Works Coordinator was one full-time position, and I thought you said that in addition, you got 0.5 assistance from a planning clerk. Is that from the planning department?
It's not a 0.5. There is Teresa who sits up front, and she addresses so many people inquiries, queries who come in with Public Works questions. So she provides assistance. Her full salary is funded by the planning department though.
And then with the subcontract fees, you've indicated that this part-time position is gonna help with a lot of the subcontracting fees, and if you get the excavator, that'll also help with subcontract fees, but it's gone from budgeted 2025 124 with a year-to-date of 174, and then it stays up at the 146. Slight decrease in the years that follow, so I don't see the decrease.
There's a slight decrease in 2027 from 146 in 2026 down to 135 in 2027, and then it's really just going up by inflation after that.
Okay, so that change from 26 to 27 is where we expect to have the savings with these subcontractor
Correct.
changes, okay. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, one more. So the last item, maintenance and repair from 170,000 in the budget this year to 227 actual to date, not quite the year end, and then it goes back down to 175, 128, 132.
Yeah. I will have to look at that and I will address it before the end of this.
Is that maintenance and repair of vehicles and equipment?
I can't say for sure. I'll have to look at it and I'll address it before the end of today.
I have similar questions, I guess, but the first one is that travel and Pro D. You said the increase in the 2026 budget to 26,000 was to cover off the $6,000 one-time increase for training for using the excavator. So shouldn't there be a commensurate drop then if it's a one-time training in 2027 on out?
Yes, I should probably remove it for 2027.
Okay. And then, question I've been meaning to ask all along, you keep referring to a new insurance provider. Who's the new insurance provider?
Intact. It was Intact a few years ago. We used to be municipal
So,
insurance.
so as the MIA voting delegate and stuff, I was kind of surprised.
Well,
So we don't, we scratch property insurance with MIA then?
yes, just property. Our liability is certain.
Yeah, but we had gone to MIA for property insurance,
Correct.
but
And now
I
we
guess they were saying at the annual meeting and everything and promoting that they were providing a good and very cost-effective service. So to find that going back to Intact is a more cost-effective service, I found those two comments don't quite jive.
I know. It
Yeah.
was a very eye-opening experience.
Thank you.
What's pressed?
I'm wondering if you can clarify, I'm a bit confused about this other crew person, we split 50-50, but it's gonna show up in the parks budget, or is half of it in here?
No, the crew person is showing up 100% in the parks budget. The foreman is allocated 50-50 between Public Works and Parks. So Parks has a manager, a 0.5
That's what I
foreman,
missed.
and a full operator.
Thank you.
Not seeing any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm here to talk about the planning department. So we in the department manage building and development applications. We work with council on specific council directed projects. And we review and amend the official community plan and land use bylaw and other long range planning documents. And then we're also a frontline customer service. So for people with inquiries by phone or by email or in person, we want to know what their options are on their property, what they're allowed to do, what steps they need to follow to see things happen. And this is the overview of the departments. There are 5 full-time employees in the planning department. There's myself as a manager of planning development. overseeing the department tasks, overseeing the long range strategic planning, and also assisting doing development permit applications and rezonings and building reviews as needed. There are two other full-time planners, the community planner and the planner one, both of whom process development applications, review and present land use bylaw amendments and OCP amendment applications, meet with the public to review development concepts, review building permit applications for compliance with zoning, take on strategic initiatives as required. Then there is our building inspector, who's also our business license inspector. So in his building inspector role, he reviews and issues building permits, carries out inspections, issues occupancy permits. In his business license inspector role, he reviews and issues business licenses. And then our planning clerk receives, processes building permit development applications, answers those front counter inquiries, coordinates our permit process, especially the building permit, tracking the documentation as it comes in. And then, as you've heard, she also assists with the Public Works Department. So is able to fulfill that front counter role for the Public Works Department as well. So in 2026, new initiatives are almost entirely continuation of 2025 initiatives, with several large initiatives looking to complete in this year. So OCP update obviously is the large one. We'll continue. We have a budget of $50,000 for the work in 2026, and that has been funded by a grant from the province. Advancing the work to implement the MRDT, the Municipal Regional District Tax, expected completion in 2026. And then the comprehensive implementation plan for Lot 1 of the community lands, and funds from the Housing Accelerator Fund have been targeted for that work to happen in 2026. And then ongoing, so we met to the Birch Housing Society for in terms of the partnership agreement continues through 2026 and 2027, and that as well as funded from the Housing Accelerator Fund. And then this last one, working on developing a business license category for vehicle and passenger ferries to be explored and to bring amendments to the business license bylaw brought forward to council for consideration. And that one doesn't carry budget implications in terms of costs for development, but we funded through existing staff budgets. Some savings going forward. So in 2025, the planning tech position was that person was became full-time emergency program coordinator. And so removal of that budget item from the planning budget going forward. We've also seen cost savings where we are canceling the short-term rental monitoring software that we previously used to monitor short-term rentals. Because of ongoing data sharing with the province under their new act, we receive that information directly from the province. And then we see a reduction in the telephone communications budget as well.
Thank you. So in the community planning, overall in the department, we see relatively stable expenditures year over year. There's an increase in salaries and benefits by about $12,000. So that's kind of the net impact of removing the part-time planning tech position, plus the increase coming from COLA and grid progression. So there's a net change there of about $12,000. Supplies and equipment was reduced mostly for that removal of the short-term rental monitoring software and some associated costs with telephone and communications. So net increase of about 5,700 year over year, which is about 0.8% increase to that budget.
Okay, and a different page number size, page 38 of the agenda. There's quite a difference between the year-to-date and the budget for legal and insurance and professional fees. I'm assuming the professional fees are the OCP
No.
consultant.
This actually was a result of us moving. We had a significant amount of paper files. We knew that we had some savings in our salaries and benefits budget because of the delay in hiring of the planner one position in 2025. There was a 3 or 4 month gap where that position was unfilled. So we knew we had those savings in that budget line item. We took the opportunity to spend that money on digitizing so much of our planning files and not moving all these cases and cases of paper files over here. So it was a bit of a opportunity that we capitalized on to really increase our efficiency there. So that expenditure is showing up on professional fees instead of salaries and benefits for this year.
Okay. The legal and insurance budgeted at 25,000. Anticipated at least that with increases, but the actual to date is 8,000.
We just never know what's gonna come up, so we keep the provision there.
So
Councilor Russell.
picking up on that comment, the 79, 77 is what we spend on property insurance, that's probably, and nothing on legal. Is that fair?
It's all legal.
Well, it says legal and insurance.
Legal insurance is the
Okay, so
line
there's
item.
no
It's the same.
insurance.
No, it's
in this
just,
budget, it's just legal.
Yeah.
And with the building inspector and business license inspector functions are all one, done by the building inspector. Are we gonna get, I don't think we've had the annual reports this year on business licenses issued and things like that.
they come forth in January with the year total statistics.
Since I'm just thinking, with respect to housing, it would be really nice to know. And I don't know whether this now has to come from the province, how many of those short-term rentals actually are no longer operating and turned into long-term rentals? Did we achieve the objective we wanted by opting in?
I have asked the staff to provide that information. I don't know that we can say definitively that a short-term rental was converted to a rental house. You can say definitively that a short-term rental accommodation chose not to renew their business license this year.
Thank you.
So on the same subject of the short-term rental monitoring, how does that work now? Because it used to be that we would identify, or that with that contract with the software, we would identify people who were suspected of not having properly registered. Does the province do that monitoring now? Or do they respond to us inquiring?
Right. I think both, so under the changes to legislation, hosting platforms need to provide the data directly to the province in terms of listings that are along with the actual address, the actual like listed business license. And that data is available then to us to download as well, so we can see actual locations of all listings that occurred on Bowen Island. That the province is checking to confirm that they have a provincial business license, not business license, the provincial registration. And we can as well separately confirm that that the list matches our licensed properties. So it is the data in the form that we get it is a little clunkier than through our short-term rental monitoring, which obviously spends the money on making it nice and streamlined, but it's better in the sense that it has the actual address of the properties. Like the company we're using would essentially try to deduce where that listing was on Bowen, and the provincial thing says this is the address, this is where it is.
And how have there been a lot of properties, short-term rentals that have not been registered
No,
with the province?
it has not been as significant.
What's worse?
I remembered one more. Lot one, it's not happened, but you said 120,000 was included in the 2025 budget. Was any of that 120 spent? So we're carrying the full 120 forward, so that accounts for a big hunk of the operating surplus there.
In in
last,
20.
your projected budget for the end of 2025.
No, because it's being funded from Housing Accelerator Fund, so I don't have the revenue on the other
So
side.
we don't get the grant money or you've got it in for the
I
revenue.
just would, that's it.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Thank you. Recreation.
Oh,
Thank you. So the Recreation Department, Recreation and Community Services, we really are here to support the health, wellness, and social cohesion of the Bowen Island community. And we do that through providing entertainment, employment, and a lot of opportunities to get engaged. We coordinate the programming in the community center as well as providing the front desk reception services for the facility. Some of the key programs and services that our department runs for children, youth, and families are a number of after-school programs, day camps, sports, all sorts of art programs, whether that's visual, music, drama programs. We run a lot of movies. We host shared meals. There's parent and taught programs and the skate events for our all wheels events. In the adult and 55 plus category, there's a lot of fitness classes, wellness classes, various lifelong learning opportunities, drop-in sports, again, lots of movies and intergenerational activities. We run various community events and special activities, such as Canada Day Reimagine, Halloween Dance, the Winter Care Box donation drive that's happening right now. We attend Light Up Bowen, and CD Saturday is a new event that we'll be hosting next February. And it's about plants. It's not about activities of a scandalous nature on Saturday, which is surprisingly a question I've got from people. So, we coordinate the community center use, particularly within programming. Offer a lot of partnerships and outreach in the community, whether that's from local schools, societies, and organizations. We are the department that supports local art initiatives and requests for donations. And we are responsible for the sport field management. Now you'll see the maintenance of the fields coming up in multiple presentations from Public Works, you've heard it, and it'll come up in parks. We all share different aspects of that responsibility together, and the budget exists within the Parks Department. The staffing profile at the current time, we are 4 full-time staff. So that consists of me as the manager overseeing all aspects of programming and personnel. So combined full-time, permanent, casual staff, and a lot of contract instructors. We're at about 45 individuals at this time. So you can imagine there's actually a lot of payroll to do with that, and a lot of oversight that's required there. Fostering the community relationships. I assist a lot with the youth program at this time. While we don't have a youth services coordinator, that's shared with one of the programmers. Oversee the grant management, art programs, fields, any sort of contracting, making sure that the use of the community center is appropriate, and monitoring the impact on that because it's significant in some cases. We have 2 programmers within the department. Sasha is the programmer 2. Aiden Kinnikin is programmer 1. It's mostly divided up by adult and child responsibilities. So programmer 2, Sasha, coordinates all of the kids' programs, a lot of the youth programs. She teaches a number of them as well, like Art Club and Into the Wild. She teaches. She coordinates the social prescribing programs, and all of the casual rec leaders are under her supervision, as well as many instructors, the LITs with the youth program. She assists a lot with the grants and is the primary lead with community events, although all members of the department are very involved in that. And we sort of share the lead on a lot of them. So Sienna, for example, was the lead for the Rocky Horror Picture Show and the upcoming Mountain Film Festival and many of the movies. Aiden, as I said, the Carebox Drive, and next year looking at doing a disc golf tournament as well. So we share the lead and support one another entirely in the planning and implementation of those. Sienna Valley is our recreation communications and community center booking coordinator. She really drives all of our community, all of our departmental communications, whether that's the printed material, the monthly newsletter that I hope you all receive and read every month, social media. So we have our own distinct Facebook site, distinct from the municipality. So she coordinates all of that and maintains the quality control and the editing on that particularly. That's half of her job. The other half is the booking coordinator. So managing all of the user agreements, all of the communications with the customers and clients, and providing event support. And all the permitting and the finances associated with that as well. We currently also have a temporary front desk clerk. This is Molly Quarry. She's there to help out at front desk and do the process drop-ins and help customers as they come in. We address a lot of community needs that are beyond programming. There's people are using this facility in a wide diversity of ways, and they often need some support in that. She also is involved with the equipment maintenance, which I apologize, I missed out. Aiden as programmer one, he oversees the fitness center maintenance, the equipment maintenance, as well as we still have a lot of stuff in the gym over at the school. And it's a shocking amount of maintenance required to keep that orderly over there. Unfortunately, a lot of people have access to that space and get into the stuff a lot. So we also have casual auxiliary staff, and there are a number of them. Those are our leaders that come in and help with the day camps, teen nights. Like last Friday night, we have 35 kids here for a shared meal, some activities and a movie. It was quite lovely actually seeing 35 kids sitting at long tables together. These are all between 12 and 15 years old, so that was quite lovely. They assist with various different programs and all the special events. And as mentioned here, we have approximately 40 contract instructors to lead the individual programs. New initiatives for 2026. Primarily, we're really working on maximizing ways to use this facility. But in addition to that, this is time we'd really like to hire an external consultant to do a really thorough assessment of what the youth needs are on the island. What are the needs in terms of programming? Is there a need for a dedicated youth center space? And how do we really make sure that we're putting our time and attention and resources to how it is needed and how it will be used? So there are a number of community members really wanting to serve in a youth advisory capacity to be involved with that. So that's exciting that everywhere from IPS and the other schools and some of the youth focused counselors on the island and other people involved with youth programming are looking forward to getting involved in that if possible. Within the community center, we've found that certain activities are really driving up some of the operational costs in that. The registration software called ActiveNet that we use has a fee base to all program registrations and room rentals. So we've increased the budget by $10,000 in that area. Showing movies is, it's turning out to be a big hit on the island. People are really keen to show these movies. So there are annual licensing fees, and there's an annual fee, and there's also individual fees and remittance responsibilities as well. So we've increased the budget related to those. Additional increase in budget for maintaining our new equipment in the fitness center, and increasing budget for professional development for the team. One of the beautiful things about our team, actually, the recreation team, is with the exception of me, all the other members are Bowen grown. They all grew up on Bowen, which means they have a really strong understanding of community and needs, and their individual interests and strengths and skills are very diverse. So together, it's a very balanced complement in terms of passions and skills. But no one has recreation training, for example. So we need to build our own capacity in many ways to be able to implement other types of programming. So an example of that is getting her fitness center training capacity so she can implement orientations and fitness or personal training opportunities as well there. We've also found we may need to look at this $5,000 licensing fees. If it is enough, quite honestly, sorry, I have to throw this on you as well right now, but for example, there's a group called Laugh Out Live, which is an improv comedy show that we would really like to host here, and they come at a cost of $5,000, which would be absolutely recouped within the ticket pricing. But those operational costs are higher than what we've had reflected before because of the nature of the types of programs. Some of the savings from this year, approximately $40,000 of staffing and occupancy costs at the youth center has been removed because we no longer have that facility. So these savings have been redirected to fund the cost to do the proposed review of the youth programming. The rental costs for the use of the Bowen Island Community School have decreased. As we've moved all the offices and the weight room and a lot of the programming to our new facility, that's been decreased. And we actually may find that that was a conservative reduction and it may come in lower than that at year end. At this time, we've decreased that budget by 15,000.
Okay, so in looking at the recreation budget, kind of from a 30,000 foot perspective, year over year, there's very little change in that budget line item. You can see we have a significant drop in salaries and benefits. So that's because the youth center staffing was removed, and then we net that against the COLA and grid progression costs for the current staffing complement. And that ends up in a reduction of about $44,000 in staffing costs. Supplies and equipment, we talked a little bit about the added costs to expand the use of ActiveNet and the movie licensing fees. Rent and utilities is quite a bit lower with the rent and occupancy costs at the youth center being removed. You can see in the subcontractor fees, we've added the estimated cost there for doing the overview of the recreation youth services for this year. So we've added 40,000 there. We've also added about $7,500 in respect of hiring additional youth subcontractors on the intern to deliver youth programming while we're trying to figure out what that program looks like going forward. And then lastly, there's some maintenance costs that we would have paid to the children's center to run the youth center that's been taken out. So overall, almost no change to the budget, but just differences in how we've redeployed the existing budget provision.
Questions? Councilor Morris, Councilor Whittick.
I'm having a little trouble with the two lines under potential savings, saying that 40,000 of occupancy costs, the youth center have been removed. And then the next line talks about reducing gym rental at the school from 50 to 35. But I'm not quite sure how all that fits into you only had 46,000 in the budget for 2025. So 35 and 40 is 75 in my mind. So where was that?
So what page are you on, Councilor Moore?
I'm on that page. The page right up above it, there's the potential savings factors. But where's the rent for the school gym showing up in this budget?
It is the $35,000 line item under rent and utilities.
Okay, so then where was the $40,000 of occupancy costs?
It's $40,000 of occupancy and staffing costs. Merge them together. Our base rent at the children's center was $11,000 for the teen center per year, but then we also had significant maintenance costs because we were on a cost sharing agreement with the children's center to offset some of their occupancy costs.
And then the subcontractor fee blip that goes from 6,500 to 54,000.
Yeah.
That's the 40,000. That's how much is that?
So 40 for the contractor to undertake the youth review, and additional 75 for additional programmer, or not programmers, but program delivery people to help us with youth programming in the interim.
Okay, so the 14,000 that sort of is carried out, is that what we we pay the independent contractors that provide programs? I mean, they're not all considered employees.
Yeah, we're anticipating a provision for independent contractors to continue to deliver programming.
And all the costs for running the facility and everything are in the facilities management.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just a little confused about you mentioned earlier that the room rentals for the year is budgeted at $20,000, which seems kind of low to me, but you've got $10,000 of active net fees and $5,000 of licensing fees. So is that 20,000 net from those fees?
No, the active net fees also supports the recreation program revenue line item, which is $250,000. So if you're just thinking that it's to support 20,000 of facility rental revenue, it's not. It's supporting more like $270,000 of room rent, of programming and facility rental revenue.
Okay, but the room, the $20,000, that is for which room rent?
Anything rented by a third party outside.
All right.
When we're charging our recreation and using our own room, all of that room rental is showing up in the recreation programming line item.
Okay,
So it's just something that's paid by a third party to actually rent the space.
that makes sense. Thank you.
Counselor Jurgensen.
Thank you. Just a question regarding the school gym rental. I'm assuming that's not like the weight room in the school, but rather the like gymnasium, like the big, space with basketball hoops and so forth, where they do the elections. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Jurgensen. Counselor Goody.
Couple of things, with respect to the laugh out loud that it has a cost up front that would be negated with respect to ticket sales. Is that a production question that could go to the production manager
Through the chair,
rather than us
Yes.
getting into production?
potentially, but we're finding that, producing these activities within the community center is proving to be somewhat of a shared goal. And at this time, I think our department is doing considerably more of that. It looks to me that the focus from that production programming coordinator position has been on sort of more elite level productions. And running things like this isn't entirely on their radar yet. And we want to get, early in new year programming out there and done, so.
Similar question with respect to public art being on your list of activities. And I know that there was a couple of projects that I haven't heard about for quite some time in terms of painting in the bike shed, for instance, and whether or not there's an installation here, outside here in terms of some sort of a welcome thing. Is that an extra activity that is showing up?
Well, I think I was always an active member of the Public Art Advisory Committee. And since the dissolution of the committee, there are not so many active members remaining. And we do still have obligations in this area to continue. So at this time, and yes, it's following to me. And I can give you an update on the Bike Barn mural if you'd like, but it's close.
Thank you. So the active, is the $10,000 an active net yearly? Is that a yearly subscription or is that a one-time setup?
It's a percentage.
Oh, it's a percentage.
It's a
Okay.
percentage of every registration, every community center booking.
Oh, okay, so then the participant management and the room booking are both tied into the same percentage?
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful enough. Thank you. Not seeing any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll hear now from Environment and Parks Planning.
Thank you. Through the chair. The Environment and Parks Planning Department is responsible for environmental education and ecosystem protection. As an example, we've included invasive species management. And apart from the boots on the ground type work, we do provide a lot of education around that. One example is the presentation we did for the, excuse me, the Bowen Island Garden Club this past weekend. Education can also look like providing expertise to other departments. Sometimes that includes things like providing environmental perspectives to the Fire Smart program, or talking to Into the Wild kids about danger trees for the rec department. But most often that's for development processes, planning reviews. We review those for any kind of environmental concerns or climate related risks, as well as for trail connectivity, greenway continuity, and park acquisitions. We also collaborate with regional groups and with advisory committees. We support community projects and various stewardship initiatives, some formally through collaborative projects or with sustainable community grants. And we also are responsible for the creation and implementation of park and environment and climate related plans, policies, and bylaws. So currently we have the Parks Plan and the Climate Action Strategy, and we're working on the Grafton Lake Watershed Management Plan as well. So the Environment and Parks Planning Department is a department of one, but as a full-time position, I work on mostly what I just described. So the planning, the education and the engagement side of things. And then we work very closely with the Public Works Department. So the Roads and Parks Foreman devotes half his time to parks. And then we have the Summer Roads and Parks crew for the 2 people for a total of 0.6 full-time equivalent. And so our 2 departments work together on implementing capital projects and amenity improvements for parks, trails, and beaches, and just making sure that those are all safely maintained. New for 2026, you've already seen a request for an additional staff person to replace the 2 summer students. That's for a net increase of 0.4 FTE. The expected cost is $7,000 in 2026 and then $40,000 annually thereafter. Otherwise, we don't have any net new additions to the operations budget. So all of the additional budget is reflective of the cost of increased salaries and benefits and inflationary cost adjustments. So the savings are the $15,000 savings in salaries and benefits. That was reduced in respect of wages for a one-time grant internship in 2025. And then based on the prior year levels of expenditures, the vehicle fuel and maintenance and field maintenance budgets were reduced by $5,000 each. The field maintenance was that was reflective of not being able to find the contractors that were available or capable of providing some of the services that we were required for the field. Luckily, our staff was able to purchase some equipment to be able to complete some of that themselves, but so that they'll be able to do some of that work ongoing. And we do have an anticipated reduction in maintenance expenses as well, with the increased use of internal staff resources resulting from additional staff.
Thanks. Yep, so overall, the net increase to the salaries and benefits line item is being driven by the increase to the FTE component. We did reduce that budget by $15,000 in respect of the temporary interim position last year for the parks planning. Sorry, what was that title of that role?
The climate action intern.
The climate action intern was increased the wages last year, and now we've taken it out as a one-time initiative. We've added in costs for potential to undertake additional maintenance within Snet Cove this year. And adjusted the expenditures in maintenance and repair. We took out some vehicle maintenance, some field maintenance and other related maintenance expenses, just based on our prior year experience with that. So overall, that budget then comes in quite similar at last year and is an increase of about 0.2%.
I'm not seeing any questions on this one. Oh, Council Morse.
Maybe I missed it, but can you go back to the salaries and benefits line and explain the big increase between 271 and 320? I mean, that's $50,000, which seems a little high for me for annualization of a 0.4 increase.
No, it's going to cost an additional 40,000 going forward. I think when you've got the 2026 budget, it is only an additional $7,000 to do the parks full-time FTE, because we wouldn't consider hiring that position likely until almost halfway through the year. So the full impact of a full year salary in 2027 will be significant.
What sort of salary are you looking at for this position?
I think a full annualized cost, I think, is yeah. I think it's 88,000 is the full annual cost of a salary benefit for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. For our last department, last but not least,
Hopefully quickest.
Lee will join us.
Thank you. I'm here to present the profile for the facility management department. So the facility management department is responsible for all costs associated with the operating of the community center. Everything from cleaning supplies and tables and chairs and propane, all along those lines. The department consists of a custodial team that provides the cleaning, the preparation and execution of event logistics. So moving those tables and chairs, making sure that renters have what they need. Also the preventative maintenance of many aspects of the building and the repairs to the wear and tear and daily inspections. And then there's also, on the other part, is the facility manager, which is myself. I'm responsible for scheduling and managing the custodial team, working with a general contractor for warranty and deficiency work, and coordinating all other maintenance tasks. I also am involved in the development and updating of policies and procedures set out by the Joint Management Committee, and also other safe work and standard operating procedures internally from there. I also work with Community Rec, with facilitating their events and other rentals, whether that's a weekly meeting about rentals or a meeting with renters to go over needs and challenges that come up as the community learns to use the building as we intended, or sometimes beyond how we intended. Thinking about thrown toast and dance parties in the living room and things like that.
Well,
we have a small but mighty team of 6 custodians and myself. So I'm a full-time facility manager, and the 6 part-time custodians come to at about, I think it's a 2.75 FTE. There are a variety of hours that each person works, but sometimes there are extra hours when events call for that. But those hours are charged back to the renter on a cost recovery basis. This whole team interacts with BIM staff, renters, residents, visitors, audience members to answer questions, respond to requests, help people get to their events safely and efficiently. They're a diverse group. We have a retired and now volunteer firefighter, and all the way all the way to a recent graduate of high school. They all come to work with a smile, ready to jump in and help. And they're one of the faces of the building. So we don't have any new initiatives for 2026. We are continuing with the primary initiative of getting into the building and continuing to move toward the completion of the building.
We're continuing with the strategic initiatives of resolving deficiencies, acquiring additional equipment, and improve the functionality of the building, develop and update community use policies, recruit and train more custodial staff, develop and document safe work procedures, contribute annually to the Civil Facility Maintenance Fund, and identify and select qualified service providers for the things that we can't do, like electrical, plumbing, some HVACs. So savings compared to last year, most of them are one-time cost savings. So those are the costs associated with moving into and opening this building. So that's the celebrations and moving in, which was around $40,000. We are seeing savings in utilities as the building gets used and we get a clearer idea of utility use and how the rooms get used. And also with, we'll be saving in tools and equipment as we now have a baseline of our tools. When we first moved in, we had to purchase everything as we didn't have that much. And now we have an opportunity to also continue to save on things like cleaning supplies as we find ones that perform best and as we learn how to use them most efficiently in regards to events, whether that's preemptively or proactively or post events. We've also found ways to consolidate supplies, so using less of a variety of supplies and having like one that works for a whole bunch of different uses, just depending on the dose or the dilutions that we would use to clean, so that we save money that way. And we'll be saving on miscellaneous items like storage bins, door wedges, lock boxes, and things like that, now that we are a little bit more established.
Awesome, thanks. So over the course of the year, we anticipate a total budget reduction of almost $21,000, which is a change of about 4.5% from prior year. So that change is being driven, first of all, by an increase in salaries and benefits. So we do have COLA and grid progression calculated in there, plus the impact of the full year being open in operations, adding about another $9,000. We've got the change in utilities, supplies and equipment. We've taken that $40,000 one-time opening celebration line item out. $6,500 is added to our insurance estimate for this building for this year. That's representative of the full year cost of insuring this building. We didn't take over the requirement to insure this building until partway through the year last year. And as Lee mentioned, little miscellaneous adjustment to maintenance and repair. So we believe our budget is still relatively well provisioned, and as we have, we're going to be responsible now to take on those annual inspection costs of all of those building systems, because as we approach that 1-year warranty maintenance period, we're gonna have to be starting to pay for that ourselves. So we believe that we've provisioned adequate in this budget in order to accommodate those costs.
So the, sorry, again, I'm looking at page 52 with the other document. Supplies and equipment, it's, the budget was for 74,000 this year. And it's, the actual, to date is 55,000 and then projected at 31,000. So that's less the 40,000 for the opening and the move and whatever. So 74 minus 40 is about the 31, but it doesn't, if we've got 55,000 this year and it's projected to be 31,000, where's the additional savings?
Well, we did a lot of front loading of equipment. We had to buy custodial cards. We had to buy a bunch of tape. Like we just had a bunch of one-time things last year that we don't anticipate recurring again.
And then the last line of maintenance and repairs, similar, it's 44,000 budgeted, 17,000 spent to date.
Yeah.
And then projected 42, 43.
Yeah.
45.
Yeah. So we had line items for fire and we had line items for HVAC and all of that stuff. But because of this 1-year maintenance warranty period, we didn't incur a lot of those costs this year. But next year, we anticipate that we'll have to start paying for them. So we've kept those budget provisions in place.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
On the improve functionality of the facility. I understand one of the things we're looking at is this room and getting a way that people can watch on Zoom and actually know what's going on, you know, who's speaking and whatever. How's that coming?
I believe we have just issued and
Yeah, audio visual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just did.
we just had an RFP come out for creating this room. So we will see those.
Before the end of the year.
Not so much.
So we've got cost to operate the building going forward of about 440,000. And increasing COLA wise.
Yeah.
So that's now a pretty stable number because we've been here for long enough to figure that out. And then revenue, facility rental is $40,000. It's kind of, how much of the square footage of the building and these operating costs relate to the municipal offices versus the rest of the building that the rent revenue in?
I'd have to do the math again, but I mean, just looking at it, I think it's about 1/3 of square footage relates to municipal uses.
I'm just anticipating questions from the community. Because you know how much we were paying in rent and operating costs for the other facility versus what it's costing for just running this portion of the building. So it's costing us a fair amount of money to actually operate the rest of the community center.
Okay.
That's a good.
Sorry, the audio visual, you just mentioned that there's some sort of a, something that's been signed or agreed to in terms of updating or upgrading the equipment in this room. Did, one of the things that we talked about after the UBCM 2 years ago, maybe, was the Rick Hansen Foundation. We need to have the accessibility plan in place before we could apply for those grants. Was that done?
I would defer to the public office.
Through the chair, I do have some information on that. I'm not sure about the Rick Hansen grant specifically, but what's just been released is an RFP, a request for proposals. And the accessibility, members of the accessibility committee were consulted on that before it went out. And we will be applying for Spark funding. Sorry, I don't know what that acronym is this moment, but I've heard.
Then they are, yep.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you.
One more. Have we got anything in the budget? Or maybe that's going to be in the capital budget. So that we can use Zoom in the theater or the multi-purpose room?
Not currently, but I have been chatting with some folks to see what we can do to make that happen. It's mostly due to internet connectivity in that space. And then we would need equipment for broadcast.
So we've got extra equipment in here so that we can run to.
I'm sorry, second.
Well, we're videoing, so we will need that video type equipment in here.
Something similar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just take a moment to address our debt service costs. Again, this is just general fund debt service costs, the general fund being debt that is attributable to all island taxpayers island-wide. So the loans that we currently have are our community lands loan for 3 million, our fire hall loan for 3 million. Those are all long-term 30-year loans. They do reset every 10 years. So our community lands will be up for reset in 2029. The fire hall will be up for reset in 2033. And what I mean by that is the loans are in place for 30 years, but like your mortgage, it comes up for renewal every 5 years or so. So these long-term loans come up for renewal every 10 years, and you have to refinance whatever the outstanding principal is at the current rate of interest at that time. So these payments then are fixed. This first one until 2029, the second one until 2033, the community center until 2033. The fire truck short-term loan, that was just done as a short-term 5-year loan, so that will be paid off in 2027, and we will see those interest and principal payments going away. This next one is around Works Yard. It's not, we have not done any work towards coming up with a project proposal that we're awarding any contracts anytime soon, but if we do get that work done, if we do a request for proposal, you know, assume somewhere in the range of $3 million to pay for that. I just want to put it out there and just signal to council and to the community what the actual additional carrying costs of any more debt would be. And eventually that those costs would be about $195,000 a year once that loan was finalized. So general debt service costs in the moment are sitting at about 672. They will drop down to 579,000 once the fire truck is paid off in 2028. And then one can expect to see them increase again if there's additional borrowing undertaken in respect of a public works yard project. So based on last year's annual average BC assessment per household, the average householder is going to be shouldering about $285 each in respect of general fund debt. So that keep in mind then the local service area utility debts are on top of that. Our operations budget summary, looking at the grand total over the 2025 to 2026. The actual increase in operational expenditures that we presented today come to $397,801, which is equivalent of about a 4.2% increase. That I don't want you to think that translates into a 4.2% increase in taxes. This is just one piece of the overall 5-year financial plan, which is constructed of so many different pieces. A lot of these it would translate into a 4.2% increase to taxes if every single one of these expenditures were paid for from tax revenue, but they're not. Some of them are funded by fees, permit fees. Some of them are funded by grant. So it's not, we don't have the information ready yet to talk about what we're looking at as a tax increase for next year. We're just simply giving you the overall operations picture. We want to make sure that you have a really clear understanding of what's in there and what's driving the request for operating budget provisions next year. Some of the things that we're a little bit unsure of still, we don't know about some of the grant funds. Everything that we've put in, we are confirmed. We only actually have budgeted things that we know that we're getting, but there are other grant applications out there that we're working on, and as we get certainty around that, we'll certainly bring that information forward to council as well. So we feel like we've developed an operating budget that's positioned to meet our future challenges through responsible spending and strategic investment in asset management and maintenance. And we believe that it supports the municipality's commitment to deliver high quality services and focus on the strategic priorities set by council. I would like to take the opportunity to share with you what the next touch points are in this financial plan development process. So we have a meeting scheduled, a committee of the whole meeting with council on December 15th. And at that date, we will be bringing forward the draft capital projects to council. Again, not seeking any specific direction, but just want to provide you with a clear understanding of what is being put into our capital budget this year. In January, I'll come forward, we'll have the assessment roll at that time. And we'll be able to start talking about a proposed property tax increase and what that would look like to the average householder on Bowen Island. And then in February, we'll do the utilities budget at the committee of the whole meeting on the 16th. And on the 23rd, council will receive a full consolidated financial plan, including all operations, all capital, all utilities, all reserve fund contributions. We'll take that to an open house meeting and bring that back in March 9th, in order to seek council approval on a tax increase for the year. The financial plan should come forward for the first time for 3 readings at March 23rd council meeting. Come forward again on April 13th council meeting for reconsideration and adoption. And the tax rates will be brought forward at that time. And the tax rates should then be approved at the meeting of April 27th. And that concludes our presentation for today, and happy to take additional questions.
Councilor Morse.
Average value per household that you're using for calculating that cost for the debt servicing?
That I believe, that's last year's, which I believe was 1.585 million. So I anticipate seeing that come down this year.
And the utilities budgets, are they going to be at the call of the various water and sewer districts be invited to attend that and ask questions at that time, or do they have to hold off to the public consultation?
There's just one committee of the whole utility meeting. The meeting is presented to council. Community members are welcome to attend. We don't hold special meetings with the communities.
No, I know that, but will they be allowed to ask questions at that committee of the whole meeting about budgets?
I think that would be at the discretion of mayor and council as to how much public input would be permitted.
The question I'd be getting about the draft policies, that's all right.
That's fast.
I think that's a good question, and it makes me think we could make sure people know about the opportunity for public comments at the beginning of the meeting, so that people come in time to get their names on the list, make their public comments, and then presenters can answer the questions probably as they go along. So just make sure people know about public comments. Period.
Yeah, I can do some work with staff as we formulate the agenda for that meeting to see whether, the public comments section, we could do a standard Q&A section at the end of the meeting or something during. Okay, not seeing any further questions or comments. Then I have a motion to receive report, please. Moved by Councilor Getty, second by Councilor Morse. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
That is received. Thank you so much.
Aye.
To the CFO and to all the staff for all of the effort you put in to presenting both to ourselves, but our eyes in the community on this. So your efforts are very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Can we get copies of your presentation?
Yes.
Thanks.
It's on, is it like, it will be easily,
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure, we'll take a 5-minute recess, but we'll hold it to 5 as we're running. Here. momentarily.
Audio now on me.
Hello?
Hello, we're just coming back momentarily.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so everybody's back. We will reconvene. Moving on to 4.2 draft response to the Islands Trust bylaw 183, the Islands Trust policy statement over to our planner one, Xerxes Al.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here to just introduce the draft response to the Islands Trust policy statement file. Yeah, so just a refresher, at the October 14th council meeting, staff introduced the Islands Trust policy statement bylaw 183 and a request for a referral response. Council directed staff to prepare a draft response to the referral requests and refer discussion to the draft response to this committee of the whole meeting. So staff have gone through the various municipal plans and as well as looked at for areas of alignment as well as potential inconsistencies. These plans include the Parks Plan, the Heritage Plan, the Draft Climate Action Strategy, Child Care Plan, the Housing Needs Assessment, Transportation Plan, as well as the Recreation Master Plan. So just an example of something from the Parks Plan of alignment would be, and these are all in the review of the plans in light of the draft plans policy statement attachment, attachment 4. So one example would be policy 3.3.1, which establishes a network of protected areas of science distribution to preserve the environmental integrity of ecosystems in the planning area. This aligns with Article 5 from Parks Plan, which seeks to protect Bowen Island's natural capital for future and current generations. Similarly, an area alignment would be policy 3.5.3, freshwater self-sufficiency. This aligns with our climate action strategy, which seeks to advance water conservation practices and build drought resilience. Again, similar in our transportation plan, which seeks to implement land use strategies and planning and nature-based solutions to minimize greenhouse gas emissions. This is also a goal for our transportation plan, and as you can see in our section on transit. And as well, this also the new policy statement also has policy 3.4.8, which seeks to identify community heritage sites. This aligns with our heritage strategic plan. Actually, strategic initiative 8 and 9, as you can see. And this will be, so 3.4.3, 4.4, community facilities and services. This aligns with our goal and our community recreation plan to engage the community in developing outdoor recreation opportunities. We did note 2 areas of potential inconsistency. These weren't with any plans, but they're more our land use bylaw regarding floor area and coverage limits, as well as potential zoning for sea level rise and storm surge. These might require amendment after the policy statement is adopted. So just to refresh on the alternatives, we can send the draft response as prepared as is. Could add conditions. We could send no response and indicate that our interests are unaffected by the Islands Trust bylaw, or we could send a response that we do not recommend approval. Our recommendation is that this community whole considers the draft response for referral for the Islands Trust Council bylaw 183. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I have a number of questions and comments. So Councillor Fast, Councillor Morris, I'll put myself in there.
Can I ask a process question?
Yes.
I think we probably all got some comments. I mean, are we going to just go through everybody's comments, like all your comments, or are we gonna go through this policy by policy? Makes more sense to me to go through policy by policy.
We could, and I know that would be your preference, Councillor Morris. I have some overarching comments just in terms of the structure of the document itself. So maybe let's have a round of discussion and maybe questions about planners report and approach, and then we can get down into the policy level statements if that works. So starting kind of wide and then we can dig in. Yes, Councillor Fast.
Thank you. I'm quite familiar with the draft, because the way it worked out, I've had tons of input as a trustee, as has trustee Getty. In fact, I think we've actually made quite a few recommendations to the committee, that various committees that were taken into account, but I won't speak for my colleague here. I just referring to your report from the planning department, I'm wondering why or did you consider the active transportation plan and the conservation development policy that nature needs have? I'm just surprised not to see those two on the list.
Through the chair, we didn't do it for policies, we do it for plans. And I believe like the active transportation plan builds on the transportation plan, because that's what we focused on, that overarching, the higher level.
Thank you. I just wondered, because we've got the climate action strategy in here, which I didn't recognize as plan. And I thought the conservation development policy, the idea of nature needs have, is kind of a something, if we wanted to take some kind of propose something significant and leadership to the Islands Trust, that would be an option. But thank you for answering the questions.
Councillor Morris, any broader overarching comments before we go comment by comment?
Well, yeah, I've got a few concerns about the staff report. One, I guess, is the comment about the docks. It said the proposed policies will require the municipality to consult with the Squamish Nation on the construction of docks. And my understanding of any dock application that goes in right now, that the applicant has to have consulted with the Squamish Nation and referred it to them, and they actually pay a referral fee to do it. So that's sort of, and then the one on environmental protections. The last comment says this approach aims to shift the burden of proof to proponents of a potentially risky activity. I was interpreting that statement as meaning don't do it. Not shifting the burden of proof to prove that it's not a, and I, yeah, so. And then, interesting, I started trying to answer the survey. And I was having real trouble with the question. Because there's 5 policies in one question. Do you think these policies will help? And the answer's gotta be, you don't know, because they're all, you can't answer it. Anyhow, and then the communication with the public, it's the question about in October 2024, the Trust Council sought feedback from BIM on, and then you went on, and it says until issues of governance were resolved. Have these issues been resolved? We obviously said we weren't going to provide any more engagement on the policy statement until the issues of governance were resolved. So have those issues of governance been resolved? And if they haven't, why are we here?
Fair question.
So. It's, so I mean, have they been, haven't they been? I didn't dig the letter out that we sent. So I'm assuming you may cover those in your comments.
Councillor Wick, and then I'll jump in.
Just a general comment about the setting floor area and lot coverage limits and the sea level rise. The two comments where we would likely need to amend the land use bylaw. Do we need to do we need to talk about that before this policy is adopted, or do we just start after?
Through the chair, it would be after, and it would be, it doesn't require proactive changes to the bylaw, but it would be, then any new bylaw would have to comply. So if we were doing a change in the SR2 zone, which is one of our zones that doesn't have a floor area, we would read the policy to say we have to, in that bylaw to amend the SR2 zone, we have to include a floor area maximum.
Well, I just think those are both important things moving forward.
I assume we get this.
Sorry, can you just explain that again? Can you explain the question and the answer again?
Sure. So the staff comment was about potential needed amendments to the land use bylaw or the OCP if the policy statement is adopted by the trust. So the policy statement means that any bylaw that we have going forward, we need to, when we adopt the bylaw, it needs to be consistent with the trust policy statement. It doesn't require us to go back and amend all our bylaws to make sure we now comply with everything just because the bylaw is now adopted, but any bylaw that we adopt going forward would have to comply. So if we had, if somebody applied to amend the SR2 zone to like vary the side lot line or something, as part of that bylaw, because we're now addressing that zone that doesn't have a maximum floor area, we would have to, at least in our reading of it, we would have to include that floor area maximum as well in the bylaw.
I guess one of my questions, so just on that. My understanding of the Islands Trust Act in section 38 is that the only bylaws that we need to put through to the Islands Trust are those that are adopting an official community plan.
They are required to approve, sorry, to the chair, they're required to approve the official community plan, and we're required to refer bylaws that relate to areas of the trust policy statement to them. So we refer our land use bylaw to them. We have referred our traffic and use of streets bylaw to them, but I believe those are the only two, but at times there could be other bylaws that touch on the issues in the policy statement that would be referred to the trust.
I think I would need clarity on section 15. So section 15 of the Islands Trust Act is the trust policy statement, which says in 15.4, a bylaw, and the one that refers to us is A and B. So submitted to the executive committee under section 27 or 38, or referred to the trust council under section 27 or 38. And 38 is the piece that applies to municipalities. And under 38, it states that the only bylaw that the municipality needs to submit is regarding an OCP. So I'm gonna leave that there. Maybe it's something that we can come back to in my interpretation. If I see a bunch of hands up and I derail the conversation, perhaps I'll look to one of our trustees to clarify the interpretation.
Thanks. I think the text, I can't pull it up that quickly, but it's either in our protocol agreement with the Islands Trust or the letters patent that established the municipality, describe any license or permit as well as bylaws or OCP amendments that can be referred, and they just, I can't remember the exact wording, but there is wording in one of those two documents. Would be the place to look at.
It is the letters patent does provide that we've got to submit other bylaws, so land use bylaw amendment for comment, not approval. There's a difference. And if you go into the protocol agreement, there's a very detailed chart of how the referral process flows, which Linda Adams and I did. So that sets it out for the different policies. So the approval is only for the OCP. Comment is for other things that relate to land use.
Okay. That makes me feel more comfortable, and it backs into some of the comments that I have about the policy statement generally. And so I'll talk about those in an overarching way, and I want to go through policy by policy, but there's some significant pieces there. And I appreciate the work that the trust has done on this, and then there's the work to divide it into what appears to be kind of the guidelines and directive policies and or the guiding principles, the directive policies and advisory policies. However, I do feel that the document does blur vision, policy, and regulation together, in that the text frequently mixes what I would call aspirational language and procedural requirements and regulatory directives in ways that obscure that hierarchy and obscure that interpretation. And so, particularly in the directive policies, I think there needs to be possibly some consideration of a better framing of this kind of tiered policy hierarchy, so that we can understand which items bear the strongest weight. I mean, there's a lot in this policy statement that covers a lot of ground. And I have some questions about whether all of it is actually within the statutory object of the trust that it's seeking to get into. I think there's some editing that needs to happen within the policy statement, so I'm just providing feedback, from this chair to inform the document or inform our response. In that there's, I think, some coherence and duplication pieces. So there's multiple sections in the policy statement that repeat concepts like things like protect sensitive ecosystems, support protected areas like Indigenous protected areas, the naming of the consideration of cumulative effects, which is a pretty weighty statement. And then the term minimize impacts appears all over the place in ways that are undefined and have no consistent definition for what does it actually mean to minimize an impact within the context of a bylaw adoption. So, I feel that we could, as a municipality, flag some of this redundancy, suggest some consolidation, and request a more clear definitional framework for terms like minimize, prioritize, identify, support, consider, because there's no real metrics that are associated with any of those terms in the policy statement to get at what they actually mean. If it's a directive policy, there needs to be some metric that's backing up those statements. The other high-level pieces, so pieces around cultural heritage protection. So the directive requirements to minimize potential adverse impacts, to prohibit alteration or excavation. And I think this is a challenge across, it's on Bowen Island certainly, and likely across the rest of the trust area, in that archaeological mapping is incomplete for a lot of places and a lot of islands. So there's not necessarily the data there that could support a prohibition of alteration or excavation. The minimize issue, so the term minimize, again, is undefined. And depending on, I think, the trust regime at the time, because it's undefined, it could possibly be interpreted as a void to the extent of freezing development. So I think there could be a clear provincial alignment with the archaeology branch, better definition for minimize. And I'll talk about some implementation steps a little later on. The implementation section, I think there's some administrative burdens there. So, we see the language in the policy statement that says bylaws must not be at variance with any directive policy. But the challenge is that a lot of those directive policies read in broad or abstract ways. So the critique here is that I think this creates quasi-regulation without legislative authority, or put entirely in the hands of, I presume it would be the executive committee or the trust council. Because they're, these are broad terms, they're abstract terms, they're vague terms with no real metric. They are really up to interpretation. Yeah, so it uses ambiguous terms contrary or at variance without providing any sort of legal test. There's another piece around development. So, some of the definitions feel a bit activist or academic, which I don't think is necessarily a negative thing, but it just needs to be defined a little bit more. So there's language in there that says limit the rate and scale of development, but that limiting rate and scale is undefined. So I'm unclear of what that means, what that means in the context of an OCP, and what that means in the context of Bowen Island's development as a fully constituted municipality under the Local Government Act and the Community Charter. So there needs to be self-sufficient freshwater, I think is a really great statement, but what does that actually mean? Does it mean self-sufficient freshwater in the present, in the long term? How does that happen? Other pieces, there are long lists. So there are lists and references to like ecosystem types, cultural sites, shoreline environments, recreational assets, transportation system components. And a lot of these policies that sort of target those areas feel like they're guidance instead of like an actual policy statement that's really directive and specific in details where it should go. And the challenge is that, again, depending on the interpretation on Bowen, like when I look at it, when we're talking about all of these areas that need to be protected and risks minimized and cumulative effects considered, depending on the interpretation of the policy statement, that could include the entire island. And as a result, limit some of the sustainable development opportunities that we're looking to enact here. The cumulative effects language, I think, is particularly problematic because it sounds good in theory, but does not, but it's impossible without provincial data. So when we're talking cumulative effects, we need hydrological data, we need ecological data, we need archaeological data, we need cultural data, and a lot of that hasn't been carried out yet. Some of it we're starting with, some of it we're doing our own planning on when we look at watershed management and some of our shoreline pieces. But there's a burden there to consider cumulative effects for data that just doesn't exist. So this, I believe, if the trust would like to carry out, it really needs some provincial support to do some of that mapping and some of that data work. We need some trust-wide studies on some of these elements, or ultimately a removal or better definition of these cumulative effect requirements until such data exists. The last piece I'll sort of touch on here is that, and this relates to Bowen Island's interests in specific. So I find that in trust documents and in policy statement language, the term local trust council and island municipality is used almost interchangeably, but those are two very different entities. Bowen Island as a municipality is, again, constituted under a letters patent, subject to the Local Government Act, subject to the Community Charter, has a broader mandate, is responsible for its own efforts like or responsibilities such as meeting housing targets, putting out housing needs reports, wastewater siting, water, utility regulations, all of those pieces. And the policy statement gets into those areas in a way that might be some overreach, but also doesn't quite define the delineation between local trust council and island municipalities. Trust committees, sorry. And island municipalities enough, especially given that we've got an elected mayor and elected council, we've got our own letters patent, we've got a municipal service role that is very different than LTCs. So I think there needs to be a better definition of the unique roles and the statutory boundaries of island municipalities versus these local trust committees. And lastly, what's missing for me is the definition of outcome metrics. There's no, well, there is very lightly in talking about an implementation plan, but in terms of how the policy statement measures success, how it balances some of the competing priorities that are even identified within the trust, you know, from ecosystem, like the ecosystem pieces and the ecosystem protection to the provision of housing. And then ultimately evaluate the impacts on a community level or like on an island by island level is missing for me. And as a result, when I look at the document here in the policy statement draft on page 27, it speaks to a policy statement implementation plan. And this page here and the writing here of a policy statement implementation plan is doing a lot and in my mind, too much heavy lifting for some of the concerns that's been raised. So there's the overarching policy statement that's been presented, and then down the road, there's going to be some sort of policy statement implementation plan that's going to speak to how to operationalize and provide performance indicators and metrics to some of these pieces. So my recommendation would be that, you know, the language here is the Island Trust Council should implement a plan to implement the policy statement. I mean, it's an absolute must that a policy statement be developed if this is going to be adopted. And it's an absolute must that there needs to be some meaningful role for municipalities, for First Nations, for stakeholders of the trust to have decision-making authority into that implementation plan, probably beyond just a simple adoption and creation by Trust Council. So that's a lot of feedback there, but that's sort of my top level overarching feedback. I'm curious if there's any comment from staff on that. That doesn't need to be. I'm sort of just putting it out there, hoping Xerxes is capturing it all on his pad. But I'm curious about some of those considerations and how they fall into municipal operations.
Through the chair, I mean, I think from a staff level, I think we agree on sort of the uncertainty of sort of defining or implementing some of the policy statements. I know it's a conversation we've often had with the trust now, even with the current policy statement. You know, how staff and Bowen Council may interpret a policy versus how the Islands Trust may, and sort of almost, you know, who gets to define the terms of how we're evaluating policies. And so when thinking about a new policy statement, it's making sure that that is clear going into it, and we're not in 10 years, you know, having an issue with one of the policy statements where we're defining it differently. And then your other point about the difference in island municipalities, I think is a key one as well. So I know in earlier drafts of the policy statement too, I would be going through and pointing out that the Bowen Island municipality has bylaws and procedures in place that the local trust communities don't, because we do things that they don't. So we have a wider suite of bylaws that are available, whereas the trust communities may just be doing it from their land use bylaw, and that's their bylaw that they do. And they're saying, well, we do, you know, we have a public use and places bylaw, and we have parks bylaws, and we have all these other bylaws. And so when you put this in a directive policy, you're thinking about, okay, how this would go in an OCP, but for the municipality, it affects all these things that for the Islands Trust, for the local trust committee, that's not, because it's, well, that would be a regional district bylaw. Yeah. And so it's not within the same framework.
Yeah, and I think some of the impacts of this is why I got into section 15 and section 38 and section 27 of the Islands Trust Act, because really at the end of the day, in my read, the only sort of hard approval piece that the trust has over Bowen Islands proceedings is the adoption of an official community plan. Versus in section 27, when you're talking about a local trust committee, all of the bylaws need to go to the executive committee, is my understanding. And so in some ways, I think, and I don't want to like connotate it in a really negative way, because I think this initial work is really positive, and the work of updating the policy statement and modernizing the policy statement is really positive. But the vagaries of some of the language that's contained in it is ultimately less damaging to Bowen, because, you know, in our day-to-day bylaws, there's less of an effect. However, when we talk about providing input into the governance of the trust and some of the challenges that exist at the trust level, if those you know, undefined terms are in there, and you've got local trust committees that have different interpretations of those terms, and those interpretations affect every bylaw that's being adopted, I think it creates or possibly creates, without kind of definitional clarity across all of these policy statements, problems for the trust itself to seek to conduct its business across a variety of local trust communities. Councillor Fast, and then we'll go to Councillor Morse.
Sure, I think this is great to have this input. That's what this session is about, or that's what this referral is about. It's the, after first reading was the first time that the Islands Trust could come together with where everybody could agree, okay, this can go out for public consultation, even though there's been input invited all the way through, including from First Nations. And of course, Bowen has given input in the past, but it's valuable. I'm looking back at an email from August 2021, where somebody in the Islands Trust wrote in defense of Trustee Fast, who wanted one wording to say shall, so that it's nice and clear. But that's the kind of thing that there was a lot of discussion at that meeting about how to soften it and make it, sort of, anyway. There's been a lot of that going on, and a request for clarity is perfectly reasonable in my view to make. Your suggestion about how is success measured? In our strategic plan at the Islands Trust, we have a big project to try and establish the baseline and start to evaluate as we go along. How are we doing? And that's one of the things that's it was in front of Financial Planning Committee, and I believe Financial Planning Committee voted to recommend that it not go forward, that project, because of the financial impact to the Islands Trust. So it's a small staff, and people on the islands want to keep their taxes down. And so these are valuable suggestions. I just want to remind everybody that this is the current trust policy statement is what assisted Bowen Island in Bowen Island Municipality in the OCP amendment that was being requested by Metro Vancouver Parks to put the campground, Cape Roger Curtis. That executive committee is the one who looks at that and said, no, that was inconsistent with it was not consistent with the trust policy statement. So some of that, it's trying to be high level, it's trying to still be useful, and in that case, it worked for Bowen Island. And so, I just I think it's all good input. The more input that Bowen Island that this council puts in, the better. And so, I mean, I could make more comments. It's just this is the consultation period, and looking forward from the Bowen Island municipalities. I don't think there wasn't even a municipality at that time.
Right.
And so at the time of the current one. So it's good to get these comments in. Thank you.
That's fast.
Well, I'm certainly agreeing with you with a lot of the uncertainty of the interpretation of the word. And that's a real concern because it's the interpretation of the person who's reviewing the document at that particular time. And that person could have a very different interpretation of what uncertainty means and what appropriate limits for development are. So a lot of my comments were similar on that. And then, it talks about balanced decision making, but account for accumulated effects. Are humans inhabitants a species in the cumulative effect? I mean, a human is are we a species? So, and then I've just got a lot of questions along those lines and other lines, some of the specific ones. And one of the ones that I'm flipping pages looking for it here, there's a couple of sections that talk about preserving or maintaining and supporting the Indigenous rights for hunting. And one of the things we have is a use of bones act. And we went to great lengths when we were first incorporated to limit the use of bow hunting on the island. I mentioned the arrow I found in our nearby our property one day, with down to show you guys how charming it is. So I think that directly violates some of the things we could want to do. So I guess, are we gonna go through section by section, or how do you? Here's one, yeah. Prevent sprawl, harvesting and hunting areas, manage community growth and its associated impacts by directing residential, commercial and industrial development into suitable, whatever that means, locations to prevent sprawl, minimizing fragmentation of forest lands, avoid adverse impacts to indigenous cultural heritage, harvesting and hunting areas.
Maybe I'll look to our wonderful planning staff who are tasked with juggling these opinions of council. And so when I look at the recommendations that council consider this, I think we've considered it. I'm curious from a response perspective, based on the discussions that we're having here, what you might recommend for process, or what sort of recommendation you're looking for to move forward. Is this something you'd like to take back and digest? Is there what's helpful in crafting response, short of council opening out Word document on the screen and trying to
through the chart, I do think it's helpful. Yeah, the direction to committee as a whole is for staff to, revise the draft response based on the feedback provided. I don't know if it's appropriate to open opportunity for written comment for councilors to them to provide notes from this meeting for us to help shape our letter. And I leave that up to the chair. And I think the other one too is just in terms of the response summary. So in the form that we received, it has those 4 options for us to take. And obviously, we're sort of assuming that we're not going to respond that our interests are unaffected. I think we can all agree that they are affected by the policy statement. And so it would be helpful to have some direction from council in terms of is the response that we recommend approval for reasons outlined? Do we recommend subject to conditions? Do we not approve? Do we not recommend approval? But that is something that could be decided by council with a revised response in front of you as well.
I'll go to Councilor Getty with that.
So at this point, the tables for first reading and it's gone out, and this was, after multiple committee of the whole meetings that turned out to be endless work on all the different language and everything. And they've sort of fell apart in terms of committee of the whole not getting forums and everything. So then it was a general meeting of the trust and trying to go through this. So it's a huge bulk of this is the racehorse that's been developed by the committee, right? So we've ended up with a bit of a camel. And we need to have a lot of help, it seems to me. This is the first I've heard of all of your comments. And I've got 2 pages of very rapid notes that I've been taking. And I probably would like to go back to the tape and listen to it again and try and understand it. I think there's an enormous amount of content there. There's some of it that I'm defensive about and some of it that I think is really very helpful. And I think that a lot of those separate comments we could probably work through. That's because we sent that letter and we're not having any kind of community input in that. This is the first that we've actually talked about this. I think I certainly want to think about it more in terms of what you've said and, anything else that might come up. I would be very uncomfortable having staff now taking this discussion, because I don't feel like I can participate in the discussion, given that I'm still thinking about it and want to go back and review it. And I'm just slow about things like that, and I realize that, but I think that that's a lot put on staff at this point, and I think we need to, we've got a committee of the whole where the community is supposed to be here to have more discussion about it, and we've got 0 attendance. So, you know, I think that that's something that needs to be remedied. We haven't actually ourselves had any kind of input. That might be disastrous. It could be, you know, really. I mean, I don't know how it's gonna blow up. I know that some of the comments that have been made at Trust Council raising issues about the language and the specificity and what this word means and what that word means has been not shocking, but a little bit surprising in terms of, oh my goodness, I hadn't thought of that. It's come up at the last minute. So the plan is to try and get this through, at least through council and to the minister by the end of this council. And it's like our OCP, that might not be working. There's a lot of stuff in here, but I think if we can spend some time being clearer in whether or not we agree with all of the points that you've raised and whether or not there's any suggestions that we can make, then I think that it would be very helpful if we've actually thought it through and put some time into it. And you know, I'm feeling like I'm stepping away from it suddenly and looking at it from a different perspective that is probably really valuable and helpful and valid. And we need to pay attention to that. So I need more time.
Councilor Jurgensen, followed by Councilor Wick.
I just wanted to second what Councilor Getty was saying. I think we definitely need more time on this.
I don't want to oversimplify, but I think we're trying to write, or we're asking for a very prescriptive document. And I think this is meant to be more of a policy, a high level policy document. So, you know, limit the rate and scale of development. What does that mean? Did that not mean put in limits of scale and development? Just have those limits, create your limits, rather than the trust saying these are going to be the limits. So, I mean, we're never going to get through all these things and be prescriptive of it all. And if the trust does it, you know, we're not going to I don't know. I just don't, I see a hornet's nest here. I don't know how we get through it.
And I think you're correct. I think it is a catch-22 in terms of it being a high-level policy document. I think this is part of the catch-22 is that from a statutory perspective, the policy statement is written into the Atlas Trust legislation as an interpretive document. And some of the challenges is that if and based on what I'm hearing from Councillor Fast and Councillor Getty, I think some of the calibration of this is how much interpretation does the trusts and stakeholders want to leave open to the executive committee and the trust council, and how much of it should be, you know, have some prescription. So. And I think that's a challenge. I also don't feel as if it's the municipality's role to go through and rewrite the policy statement. That's totally our role as well. So I think it's again, and that's why I preface my comments by this is a lot of work. It's complicated work. I think it has to happen, particularly for the trust to define where it's going to go in the next decades. And I'm glad I'm not doing it. So, Councillor Pass.
Speaking as one who has been down in the weeds doing it, the one that you pointed there to 2.1.3 limit the rate and scale of development. That's in the general guiding principles for Trust Council. And I believe that the words limit development is gone from the directional policy, from the directive policies. I think that was taken out, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe we put it back. But my suggestion would be for everybody just to focus on the directive only policies and think about how those would affect Bowen, because these other ones are, I mean, you know, they're good and they're kind of the framework behind it. But we don't, how much energy do we want to put into this? And will the coming election, will it get passed? And it may be a start over, I don't know. So I think those are things to consider, considering, I think it's been 7 years to get to this point, maybe 8. And my suggestion would be just to focus on the directive only policies when you're reading, and some of the concepts that you want clarified, or the specific kind of wording that you would prefer instead of the wording that is seen in there. My suggestion.
And again, coming to the works back to process here. From the perspective of Bowen's interest, like at the end of the day, our core interest is getting an OCP passed. Right, so I think that can frame things, frame some of these pieces a little bit with some additional feedback around, consider more clarity. I think the implementation plan is a really key element of the policy statement that should go hand in hand with, or at least have a roadmap if the policy statement is going to be adopted. Yeah, and so I believe I'll take it as a signal from our manager of planning that I took it as a signal from our manager of planning that I should put some of my comments in writing and send it over and get the major headings so that the planners here don't have to parse everything out. So perhaps that's something that the folks that have provided substantial comments on could pass along to both the planners as well as the rest of council, so that there's a clear ability to digest and process and get back. My question is, do we have a deadline for when the feedback needs to be received?
Public feedback is February.
Through the chair, it's in early 2026. We can't recall right now if it's January or February.
Okay, so we still got some time, some time on this, okay. So perhaps we'll just receive this for now, with encouragement that council, who are interested based on this discussion, provide some written feedback to planners and circulate with the rest of council by when will be helpful for you to receive in the next week or two.
Yes, I think, by next Friday, probably, end of next Friday, we'll have done it by then.
Okay. And I can make a note in my calendar to remind council to do that for you, so that you're not hurting kittens. Councilor Morse.
My handwriting is horrible, as you know. Can you send a Word document? And I can do track page for some comments.
Of the policy statement,
Yeah.
I think we may, yes, we can create.
You could convert a PDF into a Word document. I mean, just commenting on the guiding principles. Yes, they're guiding principles, but it's very clear. It says the following set of shared principles to guide daily planning and decision-making by Island Trust Council, Island Trust Executive, local trust committee, and Island municipality. So we're supposed to refer to these guiding principles in our daily decision-making.
Right, and this, I think this gets to, again, one of the core elements of the statutory definitions and the operational differences between an island municipality and a local trust committee.
Well, I have to go back and look at the letter back and say, we have to have regard for the object in all of our activities. I think that's somewhere in the letters back.
Yeah, and
So these are irrelevant.
And I know that the object has been some matter of debate and question over the years as well.
I was going to suggest that we work to revise that draft response that's there, in light of this conversation in terms of providing, I think in the structure of this conversation, so providing general comments from council in the response, general comments, and then specific comments, so on specific policies, and then potentially we'll talk, and then we'll have a section on alignment with, BIM plans, how it overlaps with our existing plans, and sort of structure it like that for when we come back to council for future discussion, you'll be able to see that. Okay, in that response.
Okay, so for now, I'll look for a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Getty. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that is received. Thanks so much for your work on this, and thank you for the work that is. And 4.3, our CAO update. Got some brief comments on this.
Very brief, Mr. Mayor, so this is another one of my updates, covering off quarter three. This covers, general activities I've, done during that period. Any specific questions? I know it's late in the day and we're trying to get through the, so.
Just one question.
Well, it's more a comment on, do we really need all that detail? I mean, how much time does it take? And I remember in our earlier council years, we used to get very detailed report of activities and decided that we would rather have the CAO spend time working on job work, not writing nice reports to us. So I don't know if it needs to be as detailed as it is tonight.
Yeah, can I respond to that? Yep. First of all, thank you for the sentiment and the attention to my workload. It takes me about 4 hours and I think it's a good overview of the things I do because not everything I'm involved in would necessarily surface to council through a staff report necessarily. So this just provides a more detailed way to present it. Are there other ways to present this information? There certainly are, but I've gone ahead and done this, and I don't see it as being a big work task for me.
Well, just for clarity on some of the process clarity on this. So this comes out of discussions that the CAO and I had. You know, previously we were receiving bi-weekly verbal reports from the CAO, and this has shifted to a quarterly written report, and I think it's worthwhile and valuable to have in the public sphere, and you know, useful as a reflection of, you know, where council's own direct report has gone, but then also be able to refer back to the community about, hey, this is what this job does, this is what the chief of staff does, and I think even in reading the report, there's a good sort of cadence of what the municipality has accomplished when put in context with some of the reports that we received, with the quarterly operational reports that we see from receive from all the departments, and it gives me a lot more line of sight and has led some more nuance in how I'm able to message what the municipality is doing out and about the community. Councilor Wake, followed by Councilor Fast.
I find the piece incredibly valuable because it's a summary, it's in bullet point form. And it's one place I can go every quarter to see how we're progressing. And I don't know how many times everybody else gets the question, well, what's happening with whatever? And it's like, oh, okay, when did we last hear about that? You know, so I find this really valuable, the document, and I really appreciate the effort. And yeah, maybe 4 hours, but I think 4 hours once a quarter, that's a good investment. So thank you.
Councilor Fast.
Yeah, thank you. I find it really useful as well. Even though, I mean, I've been around for a few terms now, I should know how things work, but it's changing all the time. And this is, I support this, having this report here for the transparency for the whole community and the people on the different committees and all that kind of thing we can refer people to. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Jurgensen.
I just wanted to also thank the CAO for the report. I find them very helpful.
And with that, I will look for a motion to receive, moved by Councilor Wake, seconded by Councilor Getty. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Motion to adjourn, moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Zoom lag got you, Councilor Saunders. It's Councilor Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. I'm going to go directly into our special meetings. For sure.